Welcome to Module 9. This module is going to be primarily more about the theory of Blockworks, how things work in general in it, and also the theory of how to approach projects. It will kind of talk you through what's the best way to build things to get the best out of Blockworks, how to build things to get the best performance, and just it'll help give you even a more fundamental understanding of Blockworks and when and where it works best. In this video, we're going to talk about the actual actions in more detail, and that'll be inside of a field. So I'll just open up any block. We'll create a new one actually. Actions explainer. So as you're aware by now, every time you do something on a field, the actions are triggered. And those actions can be field parameters, they can be rules, they can be anything related to the field. It can be anything really that is related to the functionality of the value in the field. So it can be calling the rules. It could be related to, is this associated with a maths field? Does it trigger a new drop-down list based on a filtering? Is it an auto-generate? Do we do something if it's an auto-generate? That's the actions. So we have in our manual an actual list of the flow of what the actions are. And what I mean by the flow is they happen in this order in the field, but keeping in mind most fields none of these will happen because the field may not have any relation to this action. So to explain what I mean is, I'll take one example. Let's make a maths field. So we'll just say field 1, field 2, and maths. I'll just create a third field because the final text input field is inputting. So for text fields, when I type in something, certain actions happen. They happen before the return key is hit. And then when I hit return, other actions happen. So in this case, let's take the math field. So I'm going to walk through the actions for field 1. So what this, and we'll have the link to this in our summary. Basically, once you hit return or once a value changes, it'll go through all these things to check if there's something relevant. So firstly, applying a bartender field settings. No, this field has got nothing to do with that, so it skips it. Is it related to a merge field? No. So I don't have any merge or auto-generate fields relating to this field. Does it build linked data values in the URL? No. Is there conditional values associated with it? So you'll know how all these things work based on the previous modules. Again, no. Applied date field changes if field affects date values. So like I showed you before about subtracting days from the date, then it'll apply these things. Does it trigger the Blockworks gateway call? So that was a field that in the last module I didn't go into very deep detail about, but at this point it would trigger it, but it doesn't in this case. Is it a numeric one? So that's the field parameter. The numeric field parameter you would have seen in the previous modules where you can set it to certain decimal places. So to make this numeric, whatever. So we carry on. Apply subblock. So I never did the subblock because we may be removing that, and if we decide to keep it, we're going to make it a different module. Does it trigger charts? So is it part of that field parameter? Are we applying filter data? So remember in 2 modules ago, we're filtering data. are we applying block list settings? So the block list settings are, it's just, are we loading list of blocks? That's a field that we may be removing, to be honest with you. Apply date time difference activity. So that's our date time difference field where we're comparing two fields. Clicked on that by accident. Are we updating all the results box? So in this example, we haven't done a whole lot yet. We haven't reached any of this criteria. Are we updating the drop down from block or the autocomplete fields? So is this, like, we're asking the question, is this field related to any of the drop downs in the block? If it is, update them. Finally, we do hit something. So in this case, update match fields, we are. So now it runs into something that says, well, look, this is a match field update. So we're going to trigger that. Update the auto generate fields. So this is for the auto generate field we have. If there's something related to this, so this is the reference field thing we did a few modules ago, where an auto generate might count against this. And finally, we call the rules. And the reason we call the rules last is that goes off externally to the database and checks everything and comes back. It'll always call the rules. Even if there's no rules, it'll just call an empty list of rules. But if there is rules, it'll give you back the response. So we'll just say cannot be empty, the most basic rule we have. We go back to the front end. So now it's doing three things. It's doing the force numeric, that's what's giving our initial red. And it's doing the maths, and it's calling the rules. So that's kind of to give you a feel of everything that's happening inside a field when you change a value. So like I said, this module is all about theory, and that's where that's coming from. What we do is just we just do two more examples. So that was the maths one. Let's say we'll do a merge field. Go back to the front end. And as you can see, the merge is generating. So again, we're just going to walk through the flow. The wrong page. So straight away, it's doing the merge as soon as you type. But all these other ones don't apply. But the maths one does, so it is related to maths. So yeah, it does that one as well, and it calls the rules. So that happens, all that happens when you start typing here. And then if this causes another value to appear, for instance, the maths, all the same thing happens in the maths. And that causes a chain reaction. And it's a chain reaction that you'd be looking for. So for instance, if you have a rule now in the maths, it will then call everything there. And then if that rule populates something else, then everything will happen in the field that it's populating. And that's the basic principle behind Blocworx. The one thing to take away is, as I explained in one of the earlier modules, there are certain things that happen before key press for an input field and certain things that happen after. And that's only for the input field. So the rest of them, the things all happen immediately. Whereas with the input field, there's certain things that happen immediately and then certain things happen after you press return. But the next phase of this video is to explain that you can actually control all this. So if I go to edit mode and go to field parameters for field 1, we have a setting down here called manage field actions. This setting, to be honest, overall isn't necessary to complete a project in Blockworks. It's really for advanced users who basically just would like to look at performance. So just say you have 50 fields and all of them are doing all those things that I've called out, but then you realize, well, you don't care. You like this field doesn't have to call the rules. This field was only being used for maths. So in that case, you can actually manage the field actions. I'll show you here. So what we have here is first phase for key press events, text inputs, and data change events. This phase will happen immediately. So this basically happens before you hit return, or if it's just any other field where the data changes, it happens as well. And as you can see, this is the same order that I have in this list. So you can actually go ahead and remove everything. And while you shouldn't in theory notice any difference, what it is going to do is help with performance in the long run if you do have blocks that have a lot of fields and a lot of things going on. So what I'll do is I'll remove everything except call rules. And that's updated, so you just close it yourself. And I go back to field 1. I start typing. Notice the merge isn't working anymore, and if I go here, notice the maths isn't working. This merge did work because I started typing here. So this, keep in mind that we now have field 2 associated with the merge field, so field 2 triggers it and it still finds all the data that's it's supposed to load. But what's most important is this isn't triggering anything, except I left in call rules, so we still have our cannot be empty. Let's quickly try it the other way around. So what we'll do is we'll manage field actions. We remove call rules, and let's just say, well, we only want the maths. So update maths fields associated with this field and click add new. Press confirm update. And then we go back here. The merge won't work. But as soon as I start typing, the maths is updating. Why is that? Why, I suppose, is it working when I don't press return? And again, that's just because I decided I want to trigger that before the key press. So that's the part actually I didn't explain in full right here. It's divided in 2 phases. So I already explained before the key press. Sorry, before the enter key. We need to update the text for this, to be honest. And this is second phase after the enter key. So I've decided I'm going to put the maths function before the second phase. So I'm going to put it in the first phase. So as soon as you start typing, we have the maths. But we're going to get rid of rules. So generally you won't notice or you won't have to get rid of it if there's no rules. But then again, if you do want to kind of look at performance and you do want to just clean up your fields as much as possible, supposing we only ever use this field 1 for maths and nothing else, then you might say, well, look, I'll only put the maths function on it. I won't put anything else. And in theory, it's really just for your own advancement and like looking at performance. And to be honest with you, if you do want to use this in the future, we're happy to work with you on this particular feature because it is quite specific and it's quite advanced. And that overall is what I'm teaching about the flow of the actions. This is basically all the stuff that can happen in Blockworks to a field, and that's the order in which they happen. The next thing then is when you press submit. So this is another flow. So we have, it applies the cross-block data field updates. That's if you have the submit turned on. So you know in our cross-block data manipulator field, you might have the done with a button, or you might have it when you submit. If it's when you submit, this is triggered. It does the mail alerts, it does our Blocworx gateway fields. The data is then submitted, um, and then either a new record or an update takes place. That's if you've pressed edit. And data is reset and cleared. Default values are set again, and the cycle begins again. So we're back to the block initialization. The block initialization is when you open up the block, or just like I said, when you press submit, and it's after the data is resetted. And in this case, you have your auto generate and your date time. So I kind of started in the middle, went to the end, and came back to the front, but that's the order. So, and we'll link this inside the documentation. So that's the explanation for this video around our flows. Thank you. Goodbye.